So here's something we all knew anyway, but now it's official. The FBI undercounts the number of times an armed citizen stops a crime. By a lot. A report from the Crime Prevention Research Center shows what it refers to as massive errors in the FBI's data regarding active shooting incidents, which the FBI defines as those where an individual actively kills or attempts to kill people in a populated public area. It doesn't include those related to other criminal activity, such as robberies and fights over drug turf. The FBI says that 4.4% of active shootings between 2014 and 2021 were stopped by armed citizens. Data from the CPRC showed 34.4%, almost 8 times as many. The FBI data comes from 252 active shooter incidents, with 11 stopped by armed citizens. The CPRC looked at 360 incidents in the same time period and found 124 stopped by armed citizens. And those are just the ones they can count. The report said, quote, "There is no reason to think that the news media covers all the cases where civilians stopped attacks. And the farther back in time we go, the more cases we are likely to miss." Gary Mauser, professor emeritus at Simon Fraser University in Canada, said, quote, "Whether deliberately through bias or just incompetence, the FBI database of active shooters cannot be trusted." According to the report, there are 2 main reasons for the undercount. One is misclassification, such as when an armed citizen stops a shooting, but the shooter is arrested by police. The other is simply leaving out the armed citizen, either failing to mention them entirely or miscategorizing armed civilians as security members. And then there are the ones that it just misses entirely. The FBI data also fails to mention cases that would have gone on to become mass shootings that were thwarted by armed citizens. Quote, "Between 2014 and 2021, citizens stopped 104 out of 204 potential or actual mass shootings where we could identify the guns were allowed in the area. So 51% of attacks were stopped by people legally carrying concealed handguns." Again, the most recent data is most accurate, and for 2021, 58% of the cases were stopped in areas where people were clearly allowed to carry. Even worse, when the CPRC reached out to the FBI showing the discrepancies, they refused to correct the errors, even after several such communications over a period of 5 years. Even when the FBI admitted they had missed cases, they never made the corrections. And this is just about active shooter incidents. It doesn't include robberies, domestic violence, carjacking, home invasions, and other violent crimes gun owners defend themselves and others from every single day. And what they weren't able to find is the fear-mongering from the gun control nutbars about how the armed citizen will injure all sorts of innocent bystanders in the process. They found none of that. And they only found one case where the cops shot the hero, because usually they didn't show up until it was long over. Even when these are reported in local news, it's generally when the person fired the gun or injured or killed the assailant. What doesn't get reported at all are all the times that brandishing a gun scares away the attacker, or, even harder to count, all the times the would-be attacker didn't even try because he knew there might be armed citizens present. Just as a reminder, multiple independent analyses of various surveys and data collection attempts, from the National Research Council to the CDC, anywhere from 500,000 to 3 million times a year, an armed citizen thwarts a crime. That's at least 1 crime every minute. When the FBI is involved in so much corruption over the years, as we've covered over the tenure of this podcast, and when it fails in even their basic law enforcement function of collecting reliable data about criminal activity, one can be forgiven for wondering why it should even exist in the first place.